Welcome to the Female Disruptors Virtual Summit. My name is Lisa Beyer, and I am happy to introduce my friend Rhonda Britten. Hi, Rhonda.
Hey, Lisa. So excited to be here today.
Yes, I'm honored. So Rhonda has been on Oprah, one of Oprah's favorites, and she has shared her journey and been on many top tier media outlets. But I met Rhonda a couple years back. We're in a mastermind together, and before I met her, I heard her share her story on a panel, and I came up to her afterwards and I said, Rhonda, like, I didn't realize this, but we're both part of like the 1% of the 1% of people that go through experiences that you went
No
through.
one should go. No one should have to go through.
Exactly. Exactly. So, you know, but your experience that it got you stronger, you're fearless, you've now taken that and turned it around, and you're helping people around the world live fearlessly. So with that, I'm going to just turn it over to you. And if you could kind of share your journey and how you got to be teaching people how to live a fearless life.
Oh, wow. That's a really awesomely wonderful question, and so rich and full, right? And there's so many steps on my journey. And I think what you're referring to is the worst day of my life, right? The day that my whole world was shattered. And I think a lot of us have days like that, and we look back on them and think to ourselves, oh, if that day just didn't happen, or, you know, if I could have changed that day. Well, I look at that day and I understand that feeling. For a long time, for 20 years, I wanted to change that day too. And the day I'm referring to, as I was 14 years old, and my parents were in the middle of going through a divorce, and it was Father's Day, and my father was coming to take us all out to brunch. And he comes in the door, come on, come on. That's what dads do, screaming at my sisters and me, let's go, let's go. My mom and I start walking out with my dad. My sisters are fighting it out in our one bathroom. And as my mother and I and my father walk out to the car, he says he's got to get his coat from the trunk. And as he opens his trunk, I notice out of the corner of my eye that he is not grabbing a gun. He's not grabbing a coat, he's grabbing a gun. And when you see your father pull out a gun and start yelling at your mother, you made me do this, you made me do this, you freeze. I froze. And I only could get out, stop, Dad, stop. And my father cocked that gun. And as he's saying to my mother, you made me do this, he fires it and shoots her once. And I am trying to stop him by saying stop. And he cocks the gun again, looks at me. And I absolutely believe I'm next. He had just shot my mother, and now he's got the gun pointed at me with a loaded bullet in the chamber. And I blinked, he blinked, I blinked, he blinked. I mean, we just stared at each other for the longest time. And then my mother, with already one bullet in her, looked up and saw that gun in my face and screamed, no, don't. And my father, in that moment, realizing that my mother was still alive, took that bullet intended for me and shot my mother a second time. And that second bullet went through my mother's abdomen, out her back, landed in the car horn. And for the next 20 minutes, all I heard was, and then my father cocked the gun again, got on his knees, puts the gun to his head, and fired. And within a matter of 2 minutes, I was the sole witness to my father murdering my mother and committing suicide in front of me. Now, I don't know how other people would respond. I don't know what they would do, but this is what I did. I blame myself. I mean, I was the only one physically out there that could have changed the scenario. And I didn't grab the gun. I didn't kick my father in the shins. I didn't even run in front of my mother, right? I didn't even take the bullet for her, so to speak, right? I did nothing heroic. And for the next 20 years, the level of shame and guilt that I felt for not saving my mother, for not doing anything heroic, just ate at me. And so I kept up my grades, right? I'm good at, basically I split into two that day, right? The outside me that pretended everything's fine. I'm fine. No, I'm fine. Everything's fine. No, I'm good. I'm fine. And the inside, right? That just believed that I never had a right to be happy again. I never had a right to anything good, because if you don't save your mother, you don't get to be happy. You don't get that. So by the time I hit college, I'd started drinking. I got 3 DUIs. I tried to kill myself 3 times. And that third suicide attempt, they put me in a psychiatric ward to evaluate me. They deemed me not crazy, let me out. And I realized at that moment, when I entered my little tiny studio apartment, I realized that if I'm not dying, I got to figure out how to live, because I'm not dying. and I wanted to die. Now, I wanted to say one thing, that the 20 years during the time I'm drinking and trying to kill myself and getting DUIs, I was doing every single possible thing I could. I was going to therapy. I was doing trauma work. I was doing inner child work. I was doing shaman work. I was doing energy work. I mean, I was doing you name it, I did it. Every book, every workshop, I was a self-improvement slut, right? I was trying to find something to save myself, right? I was trying to find anything to save myself. And all those things were good. Don't get me wrong. I value those books I read, those hundreds and hundreds of books I read, those hundreds of workshops I went to. They all provided tools in my toolbox. They all gave me some sustenance. Yet it wasn't until I really uncovered what I do today, which is now called fearless living, that everything clicked into place and everything made sense. So I have a lot of tools in my toolbox from those years and from those times, but I couldn't utilize those tools, and they didn't change my opinion of myself or change my opinion of what was possible for me, give me a right to be happy, until I understood how fear worked.
When it comes to women and fear, and that story is like unbelievable, Rhonda, and we've heard a lot of stories today from women speaking, and the word trauma has come up a lot. I'd say half the speakers have experienced some sort of trauma. Sure. That they were, down, to rock bottom. Yeah. And crawled their way out. And, yeah. What you're talking about is 20 years of, basically self-development, like personal care, trying to, work on yourself, and
while crawling on my knees and trying to kill myself at the same time.
Yeah.
Right.
And so what happened that you were able to kind of like get it to the point that you are now, and come to this aha moment of now that you're helping others, like, lifting others up and out of maybe the depths of despair? Some of the most successful people are needing to be pulled up.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, we all have fear. And I think for me during those 20 years, I never thought I was afraid. I mean, I grew up, I'm from Finnish heritage, so we didn't have any feelings. We didn't grow up with feelings, So people say to me, oh, so you were really afraid. I can see why you were afraid with your father. I'm like, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't scared. I never even said those words. I don't remember ever saying I'm afraid or I'm scared my entire life. And I think the fallacy is that if we don't say we're afraid or I'm scared, that we don't have fear. And I think that the arrogance of that and the belief that you don't have fear is what gets us into trouble. I know it got me into trouble, right? I was so arrogant thinking, well, I'm not afraid. But in fact, fear is part and parcel of our neurobiology. It's part and parcel, it's wired into our brain. So unless we have a relationship with fear, and unless we know how it works for us individually, fear will always trip us up. And they could I always like to say that, fear isn't fear. Like I didn't call it, like I said, I'm afraid, or I didn't say I was afraid or I'm scared. Instead, what really shows up in people's lives is their fear responses: procrastination, overwhelm, anxiety, perfectionism, comparing, competing, right? All of those types of things that give us heartache, that cause our suffering, that we think, why do I do this? I just want to quit procrastinating. It's like procrastination is just a simple fear response. All of those things are fear responses, and we make them like they're the problem. They're actually not the problem. They're just a symptom. And once you understand how fear works, and that's really what changed my life. Once I saw it for what it was, and it was a magical moment in my life that I can share or not, but it's like there was this moment that it kind of like, I can't say anything else, but it's magical. It was like a magical moment of insight and revelation, and just everything I'd ever done and everything I'd ever said or heard or anything. It was like an awakening. I feel odd always using that word, like an awakening, but it's like I woke up and I saw fear exactly for what it was and how it worked. Like in an instant, I knew everything about fear. And then it took me many years before I ever started working with clients, because I was my first client, right? And I didn't think that I would teach anybody anything I was doing. I was just trying to change my own life, right? I was making up exercises for myself. When I left the psychiatric ward, that third suicide attempt, and they told me, I'm not crazy. When I went back to that studio apartment in Los Angeles, I remember thinking, I got to figure out how to live. And so I started in that moment creating exercise. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was just literally going, all of these workshops and all of these books and everything I've done, all the therapy, everything I've done has not made me change, has not made me proud of who I am. It has not made me get away the feeling that I'm not good enough. It has not taken away the unworthiness, the powerlessness, the helplessness, right? It has not taken that away from me. And it's like, you know, what I say always is in fearless living, that does get taken away. Like you don't think that anymore, right?
You think it was fear of change?
It's much deeper than that. I mean, I think that everybody's, if we want to say generic or specific, I think most people's generic fear is fear of not being good enough, right? That's generic. But we all have an individual fear. And I call that, I've created a method called the Wheel of Fear and Wheel of Freedom. And my personal wheel of fear, my core trigger is loser. So, you know, and yours might be stupid, or yours might be foolish, or yours might be, you know, rejection, right? Like we go through a process to help people identify it. But once you identify it, it's almost, and clients say this to me all the time, it's almost as if, you know how they say when you die, life flashes before your eyes? Well, this is when life flashes before your eyes. You like literally go, I know why I did this. I know why I did this. I know why I didn't do this. Oh my God, oh my God, my life makes sense. And so there's this level of profound peace that comes over you because you see now it wasn't you. It was just fear. And once you can separate yourself from there's something wrong with you because you procrastinate and really go, oh, that's a fear response that happens when I am in the unknown, when I don't know where to go and what to do, when I have that thing triggered, oh, I know what to do now. So it becomes this, you know, the invisible becomes visible, right? You know, our neurobiology is, by the way, against us in this situation because neurobiology, we're wired for fear. So we've got to use our neurobiology for us. We retrain that so that you can use it for yourself, and that you can actually live the life, as we say, live the life your soul intended and become the person you were born to be, that you're destined to be. And the only thing stopping you from doing that is fear, period, end of story.
So fast forward to today, you're now teaching and sharing this wisdom and this knowledge.
For 26 years.
For 26 years, courses.
Changing life since 1995.
Yeah. So can you give us some, you know, just tips and insights on what you share in your courses, how to overcome fear, how to live fearlessly, like, and what your courses are all about, so we can get an idea? Because I think, I mean, for me, like I see women and myself too, fear of failure, fear of change. Yep. Those are two big ones. And fear of change, you don't even realize that you're fearing change. And fear of failure, you're like, you didn't get that client or that promotion. And it's like, that's okay.
Yeah. And those are fear responses: fear of change, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of loss, fear of loneliness, fear of being judged. All of those things are what I call a fear response. They're just how you respond. It's kind of like this, the easy fear to identify, like the simple fear to identify. And one of the things that I really have learned over the course of my lifetime and through my studies, et cetera, and neuroscience says this as well, is the only way that you can truly change your life, like truly, like no kidding, truly, is by changing your filtering system. So you can change a belief here and there. It's like changing a brick, but you know, that's nice and it's good. It's lovely that you can do that. But you really have to change the way you see yourself in the world, literally change it. And your brain will always choose the way it's always chosen, because that's how we're wired. So unless we kind of learn how to co-opt our brain back, we will always choose the thing that the brain will automatically do, right? So I'd love to give a quick little exercise to get people really going. So I'm just going to give a very simple one, but it has an immediate impact, okay? Because I think one of the things that we do, especially as women, is we beat ourselves up, right? We go, oh, I should do this better. Why didn't I start sooner? If I only would have, right? We spend a lot of time justifying our lack of action and making excuses for it, as well as beating ourselves up for what we do and don't do. So we spend a lot of time thinking, feeling, and using that to hurt ourselves and keep ourselves in suffering rather than setting us free. So this is a very quick little exercise that we can get like some immediate results right now. So everybody get a piece of paper if you got one. And what I want you to do is I want you to put a line down the middle of that piece of paper. That's right. I want you to put a line down the middle of that piece of paper. Now I want you to think of that's right. Thank you. I want you to think of a problem you have. And it could be an area, it could be like health or money or career or, dating or love or, again, whatever area you go, oh, this area just really bugs me in my life. Okay. So just put it on top of the 2 columns, whatever it is. So you could write career, you could write job, you could write business, again, love, whatever. Now on the left-hand side, write the word control on the top of that column. On the right-hand side, write the word no control on the top of that column. And in that area of life that you feel frustrated with, that you want to shift or change, I want you to just jot down some things you have control over. What do you have control over in that area of your life, in that situation? What do you have control over? And what, in the no control column, what don't you have control over? What don't you have control over? So what do you have control over in the left-hand column, and what don't you have control over in the right-hand column? Okay. So just write a few things down, and I'll give you a quick little example of a client that I had who was an actor. And he came to me because he wasn't getting the acting jobs he wanted. He wasn't building his business the way he wanted. And he was feeling frustrated, and he, kind of blamed the world a little bit and just was like, it's all nepotism and I can't get ahead, And I gave him this exercise, control or no control. I said, well, what are you in control of when it comes to your career? And he wrote down the things he's in control of. He's in control of, getting photos taken. He's in control of showing up at auditions, properly dressed. He's in charge of memorizing the script. He's in charge of lots of things. What he's not in charge of is getting hired, right? He's not in charge of that, not in charge of getting hired, right? And of course, there was other things on the list, right? So then this is what I asked him to do, Lisa, is in the area that you have control, I want you to write down the number 1 through 10. How well are you doing that thing? So where you have control on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 means I'm like killing it. I'm on top of it like this. I'm amazing doing this and having control over this. Or 1 is like, I have no control and I'm losing my mind, or somewhere in between. Is it a 2? Is it a 5? Is it an 8? So rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 for every single thing you have control over. Okay. So my client did this as well, right? Taking photos, dressing appropriately, memorizing. And what he noticed is he was doing none of those at 10. He wasn't doing any of those at 10. Because the things he was out of control of made him feel powerless. So he did not focus and give his energy and his fortitude and find the skills and the resources he needed to actually make those things a 10. He used the things on the right-hand side out of control, the helplessness, the powerlessness, to justify his lot in life. And we all do this. It's natural. It's this part of being human, right? But where we want to look is, okay, well, wait, if I have a 1 to 10 in all the areas of control and we're only doing a 5 or a 4 or an 8, how could you build those up? And how could you take back your power? And instead, the things you can control, they're not yours to worry about or think about or bother with.
That's about right.
Right. And I always say, if you're a spiritual person, I like to say, if you believe in God or universe or light or source, you can actually, the things you're not in control of, you can put a big X on top and say, that's God's job. That's spirit's job. That's the universe's job. That's not my job. But what we focus on mostly when we get all discombobulated is all the ways that we're powerless, the ways that we're helpless, the ways that we don't have, choice. And that keeps us off track. That keeps us stuck in the hamster wheel of what I call the wheel of fear, just going around and around and repeating the same problems, even though they look better and we think we're getting ahead, but we then hit the wall again and go, why am I still doing this?
How do you get unstuck from that no control?
Yeah. Well, one, just this exercise alone, because there's a lot of things. Obviously, I have a very large toolbox. And of course, I help people identify their unique wheel of fear and wheel of freedom, which is really the cornerstone of everything I do, right? Because once you understand how your fear works, it's kind of like a light bulb. It's like, ah, right? It just, everything shifts and you start seeing your actions differently. You start seeing your thoughts differently. You start seeing your feelings differently. And I would say once you get your wheel of fear, I would say 30 to 50% of your negative thoughts disappear in that minute. Like you never think of again. Maybe 30 to 50 you're going to pay attention to. And then within weeks, you're literally not going to beat yourself up anymore. And it's an incredibly freeing moment when you don't ever put yourself down or compare yourself to another person again. It's incredibly freeing, right? So when we come to the control and no control exercise, this one exercise, what I invite people to do is actually ask themselves, what kind of support do they need? What kind of resources do they need? And how can they move up on those areas that they have an impact on? And instead allow the things that you don't have impact on to really be released and let go, right? And also the other really important thing is to start understanding how your brain works so you don't feel guilty or shamed. So what I teach in my class Fearless Living training program is I talk about how the brain works is that your brain is wired to look in the past for a solution to a present problem, thinking it's going to create a different future. So your brain is wired to look in the past for the solution. And your brain is wired. The reason we exist, the reason the brain works the way it does is it's merely for survival. The brain, and I would say fear does not care if you're happy. Fear only cares that you're alive. So how can it guarantee that you're alive? By doing all the things that you've done in the past, because you're alive now, so it's not clearly done a good job, right? So that's why when you're about to take a risk, what we call stretch, risk, or die, when we're about to take that stretch, risk, or die in our life, we are going to hit the fear zone. We're going to hit that unknown, right? We are going to hit it. And if we think we're not, then we're being arrogant, right? We're being ignorant. We're being like, oh, why am I doing this? What's my problem? Why can't I? No, because of course it's a stretch, risk, or die. It is outside your comfort zone. And with that awareness of stretch, risk, or die, now you can be like, okay, wait a minute. Again, if we had the will of freedom, you could be like, well, what would freedom say? What could I do in that moment, right? So getting unstuck is really shifting your perception and moving from a what's wrong with me mentality to what is mine to do, and what is mine to do? What am I here to do? And what is the life that is meant to live through me? So it's shifting from an external perspective to an internal, but even more importantly, from a freedom-based one rather than a safety one, right?
And I think, what you went through was very extreme, and it doesn't have to be necessarily that extreme for people to
That has nothing to do with fear. Yeah, there's nothing to do with fear. Zero.
It's all relevant, right?
Well, it's actually, it doesn't even matter. Mm-hmm. Trauma is trauma is trauma.
Right.
And our wheel of fear is formed by the time we're 5. So my parents dying the way they did has zero to do with what I'm afraid of. Zero. Research has also shown that our fears are handed down through our DNA many times. So it has many times your fears have zero to do with your personal experience, what has actually happened to you, okay? Really, the way that you operate from a fear versus freedom perspective was formed by the time you were 5. So most of us, I shouldn't say most, many of us, the things that we go, oh my God, if that boyfriend didn't break up with me, or if I could have just got that job. Yeah, that fear was formed way before that ever happened. My fear was formed way before my father took that gun out and shot my mother. So it has zero to do with my wheel of fear and wheel of freedom.
It has more to do with the traumas that you possibly experienced up till the age of 5, or I
don't even say trauma. So I think trauma is a new word that, and I love it, by the way. I love that we're talking about trauma more transparently. I think it's important and I think it's valuable. And, as we're growing up, I like to think of it this way. You're growing up, you're 9 months old, okay? And you're hungry. And so you start crying, wah, 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 I want a bottle, Mom, right? And your mom comes up with the bottle, your caretaker comes up with the bottle, and little kids, they just immediately go, yay, I got the bottle's coming, right? They know what the bottle is. I'm so excited, right? And the doorbell rings. And Mom takes the bottle and goes to the door, and you start crying again. I want you to imagine in that moment that here you are, 9 months old, and you don't like seeing your mom walk away. So let's just imagine, let's pretend that you put on a pair of dark glasses because you never want to see your mom walk away. And just imagine that your heart hurts. So you put on a big, giant, puffy jacket so your heart doesn't hurt anymore. Imagine that you're hungry. So you put on another sweater and jacket in order to protect your stomach, right? And so as we're going through life, all these little moments that literally are unconscious and literally have no, and many times have no trauma related to it per se. It's just life, right? We are actually building up a way of being in the world that we can navigate it in such a way that we stay safe. So whether there's actual, trauma per se, i.e. abuse, physical, emotional, sexual, et cetera, or a traumatic doctor's visit, right? They now say, dental visits, doctor visits for kids are very traumatic. Or if it's simply your mom walking away with a bottle, those things add up. And I say to my clients and my students that here you are at 32, 47, 56, and you've got 183 jackets on, 45 pairs of sunglasses, 120 pair of snow pants, and you think that's who you are. You think you're free. And so what happens is as I support my clients in shedding those jackets and shedding that, what happens is all of that unresolved, all that thing we're hiding from, right? Can come up to visit us, right? And we don't want to feel it. So we put the coat back on. So it doesn't have to be traumatic for you to have a wheel of fear and wheel of freedom. In fact, the wheel of fear and wheel of freedom is part of our neurobiology. You have one, whether your life was perfect or wasn't perfect. So it's about moving beyond that you have to have trauma in order to have fear. We all have fear. It's part of how we're wired.
We definitely do. And, as women, we're touching on making changes when it comes to equal pay, when it comes to ageism, when it comes to abuse of power, like the Matt Lauers of the world, getting our fair share of the VC money when we're trying to start a company and get investors. So, fear, I would say, goes into every single one of those categories because of, our history and like the way we've been conditioned, and every society has been conditioned, men have been conditioned.
Right.
So, that's, I think, like the most important question you can help us answer, give us some tips on how we can overcome the fear in those areas, because those are, whether it's a client, a boss, you're applying for a job, you want to find out if the guy that's applying for the job is getting the same pay as you. Mm-hmm. It's scary. It's really scary. And you don't need to have, like you said, trauma to be afraid to approach that and make changes.
Yes, that's right. So I'll share a quick little tool to support you, because the control and no control is an exercise you can use in that scenario, obviously. And just recognizing that I'm going to step back for a minute. I think one of the things that I know I wasn't taught growing up and wasn't taught in college or beyond is how to communicate impactfully and effectively. Most of us aren't taught that. Most of us communicate based on how we're feeling. We're not actually communicating from a place of freedom, right? So I think just getting communication skills under your belt and becoming an excellent communicator is going to support you greatly. The exercise that I want to talk about right now is stretch, risk, or die. So you talking to somebody, maybe what I call stretch as risk or die. So let me just quickly identify those. So just imagine a bullseye, right? In the middle, there's your comfort zone, right? We all know what the comfort zone, right? It's comfort zone is things you're comfortable with, even though you hate it, you're comfortable, right? The circle around that is what I call the stretch zone. And the stretch zone is something that you can do, you just haven't done. You can do it, you just haven't done it. I also call the stretch zone the beat up zone because it's actually where our self-esteem erodes the most. Because knowing we can do something, not doing it, is devastating to our psyche and confidence, okay? The next circle is called the risk zone. The risk zone is something that you don't know if you can do. You don't know, can you get that VC money? Can you? I don't know, you don't know, you're not sure, right? And then, so there's the comfort, the stretch, the risk, and then outside the risk zone is what I call the die zone. And the die zone is you're going to die if you do it, right? Like you're like, like that is like, oh my God, there's no way I'm ever doing that. Okay. So one of the things when my clients find themselves stuck, as you brought up earlier, I actually ask them to take that area, same area that you use for control and no control, right? You can use the same exact area and you put it on top of that stretch, risk, or die model. And you write down all the things, all the actions that you have taken or not taken in order to move that forward. So you could put that same control list in that same stretch, risk, or die. What this helps you see is how many times, I'll say it this way. I want you to put on the stretch, risk, and die. I'm going to expand the exercise in this moment. So I'm just kind of getting my brain how to expand it quickly. So instead of just putting actions on that stretch, risk, or die, what I'd also like you to do is I want you to write your feelings and your thoughts on that as well. So now what you've got is you've got this stretcher's gonna die that's filled with actions, feelings, and thoughts, and putting it in the proper place, how scary that gosh darn thing is. So for instance, I always ask my clients, do you ever create a list of 10 things to do? Of course you do. Most people do, right? And I say you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you skip 6, you do 7, 8, 9, you skip 10, and you put 6 and 10 the next day and you just keep skipping them and you ask why you skip them. Well, when you apply that list, that checklist of all the things you want to do, those feelings and thoughts, and apply it to that stretchers can die, you're going to quickly see why you don't do number 6. And you're going to quickly see why you don't do number 10. It's no longer a secret. It's not because you're lazy or you're stupid. It's because it's probably in the risk to die zone. And when it's in there, your whole body, brain is like, that's dangerous. Because the brain also doesn't know the difference between an emotional fear and a physical fear. So when you're taking a risk, when you're taking that stretch, you're taking an emotional fear as well as an action, i.e. trying to raise money, but those are emotional fears as well. And those emotional fears are what hold us back 99% more of the time than physical fears. So starting to identify your emotional fears and what I call the fear responses is going to give you the clarity you need in order to have more courage to take action.
Totally. I just want to read some of the comments. Wow. Pascal says, wow, amazed and grateful you are still here and sharing this with us. People need answers and tools to cope. Fantastic insight. This is exquisite. Betsy says she's guilty of, I think, some of the things that you were talking about. Pascal says, again, this is fantastic. And then Anne says, what should I do if I need this process, but I have no money to pay for courses and I don't have any more time to start earning money? This must happen now. What resources are out there when I am personally depleted? And I think a lot of women share that.
Yeah, of course. Well, that's the thing. We always have things that are going on for no charge because of that. When I first started Fearless Living, I knew that I had to have something for everyone's time constraints and money constraints, because fear doesn't care about your time and money constraints. It's going to visit you anyway. So we just finished a 5-day confidence week, 5 days of training with me, training in the morning, training, Q&As in the afternoon, and that's still available. If you go on over and, contact Fearless Living, you can go and get the free replays because they're good for another, I think, few more days. Other things that we do in Fearless Living, go to join our Facebook group and start getting support there. We also, in our coaching program, you can actually be coached by one of our coaches in training. So we have lots of things for folks in order to start shifting their life that is low or no cost. And then there are obviously other programs that take more time and take more energy and take more investment to get you further faster. So it depends what your time and money constraints are, but neither time nor money is what we buy into at Fearless Living. There is something there that can support you, for sure.
Yes, Anne said, getting coached by coaches in training is brilliant. I agree, brilliant. We did an interview a few years back, I think right when the pandemic started, and this just kind of stuck with me. It was kind of like we were all stressed out, and you shared some exercises that you can do, like when you're feeling like, I guess, fearful or stressed, and it was like kind of like rubbing and things like that.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can you share some of those things that we could just do independently to kind of like release fear and stress?
Sure, of course. So I'll give you a couple. So these are actually exercises you can do when you're having moments, just like Lisa said just now. You're feeling anxious, maybe you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling uncertain, right? You're feeling panicked, right? So one thing that you can do is, everybody, if you're able to sit somewhere, go ahead and take a seat. And if you can't, just listen to the exercise and do it when you can. And what I want you to do is I want you to put your legs together. Okay, I want you to put your legs together in a seating position, and I want you to put them together as tight as you can. So it's like this: tight, 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 inside, tight in the inside of your legs, like your thighs, or really tight, 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 thighs, 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 tight, 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 tight. Keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it, tight, 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 tight. Okay, stop, right? And you do that three to 5 times. What happens is it's like your muscles like hold on to all of those nerve endings and help relax them. It's a trauma response exercise, right? So you do that, and you can do this. Imagine you're at a dinner party, You can be under a table and be doing this. You can actually be having somebody see your legs and do it, because you don't have to go tight, 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 right? You can just be like, you know, like you can just be doing this. I'm doing it right now, and I can still hold a conversation, right? But I'm squeezing my inner thighs together. So that's one that's really effective. Another one that's similar to that is by actually holding your arms, and by basically just grabbing your arms and just holding them tight. Okay. Same type of thing. You want to do it as, you know, as hard as you can, and then take a breath and then do it again, etc. Another way to simply do this is take your hands and put them on your thighs and push them down. Okay. So you're causing stress in order to create relaxation. Okay. So that's one thing. I'll do one more exercise. So those are 3 really quick ones that you can do with your body. Another thing that one of my clients has told me, this is the thing he goes to all the time when he's feeling, you know, fear, and maybe he doesn't know what to do in the moment, and he needs a second to, you know, to really kind of, you know, get himself centered, is take your hand and put it on your belly. Put your hand, put it on your belly. Now, when you're breathing, just go ahead and breathe. What's your hand doing as it's on your belly? What's happening with your hand?
Back and forth.
It's moving up and down, right? It's moving back and forth. It's moving up and down. It's doing what your belly is doing, right? Well, I want you to imagine, Lisa, that this is fear, that this hand of yours is fear. And I want you to imagine when fear feels like it's on top of you, that's how it feels, like your belly, it's like moving up and down, and you can't separate yourself from fear. It's like you and fear are one. You don't know that fear is not who you are. It feels like it is who you are. So in that moment, when you think fear is who you are and you're losing the sense of your true self, what I ask my clients to do is put their hand on their belly, breathe like that. And then I ask them to move their hand 6 inches out. And now breathe. What's happening, Lisa?
Feels freer.
Yeah, right? It's freer, right? Like your belly can do one thing. It's not attached to fear. It's not at its whim. Fear is separate. And this helps you start recognizing that you are not your fear. Fear is not who you are. Fear is a thing that comes upon you in order to keep you safe, but it is not your true nature. It is not the truth of who you are. Those negative thoughts, those beating yourself up, that feeling of stuckness is not the truth of who you are. It is literally just fear wanting to keep you safe. It's just really bad at doing it in a way that helps us. Instead, it does, you know, kind of keeps us stuck, because it can kind of keep us the same place. And it knows where we are, right? So when you're feeling that moment, even just you're in a meeting again, you're at a party, wherever, just put your hand on your belly and just be like, okay, that's how fear feels. I'm feeling like fear is part of who I am. Okay, now I'm going to just move it out a little bit. I can already breathe. Yeah, you're not your fear. Fear is upon you, but it is not who you are. So starting to separate yourself from those thoughts and feelings that you think are true about you, which they're not, but they feel true about you, just by doing that exercise is going to give you a little space for you to bring your true nature back in, and your wholeness back in, and the reality and the beauty of who you are back to the forefront.
Love it. We have a few more minutes. If anybody has any final questions, I have one more. I was just wondering if you have any daily rituals that you recommend to kind of keep us balanced and high and positive energy, not get sucked into things.
Yeah, I do. I actually have a morning ritual and an evening ritual. So I'll start with my evening ritual. I take showers at night. You don't have to, but you can. I take showers at night. And my shower at night is really to release the day and to take all the energetic, you know, if you believe in energy, I detach from everyone I met or everyone I talked to, so I get clear about what is mine and what is other people. So I clear that energy field. And so that I am now inside myself and nobody's attached to me. And I also sing in the shower, and I also write notes to myself. So the shower is, for me, a very healing, cleansing space. So I use that. The other thing I do is I read a spiritual book every night before I go to bed. Now, why do I do that? I want to be having that, a philosophy book, a spiritual book, etc. I want that to be what it is that my brain and body and heart are mulling on when I'm sleeping. When I read a book, a murder mystery, or I read even a self-help book, That does not, me personally, does not center me and help me go to sleep in comfort, ease, grace. So I read something spiritual before I go to bed. I also say a prayer when I wake up and go to bed every single day. Same prayer every single morning and every single night. And it is as follows. Show me where I should go. Show me what I should do. Show me what I should say and to whom. Guide me in all that I do. So that's the last thing I do. I really, because I am a God girl, I give my life over to source. Again, you can say whatever you'd like, an affirmation, a mantra, whatever supports you. And then in the morning, the very first thing that I do, literally before I even open my eyes, I am saying that prayer again. Because I want to anchor myself in what I want to lead my life that day. I don't want the day to decide who I am, okay? And let me just say one more thing that helps. Actually, there's a couple more things, but I'll say one more thing, and then if we have time, I'll share a couple more. One is that research has shown that if you write down before you go to bed, the number one thing that you're going to focus on tomorrow, you're more likely to do it. Okay. Also, we have a couple exercises in fearless living called gratitudes and acknowledgments and intentions. And we do gratitudes in a specific way. Gratitudes are about someone or something outside of ourselves. We're not grateful about ourselves. We're grateful about other people out there. And we write today I'm grateful for. And then something specific, very specific. It has to be specific. General is not going to get you, is not going to change your brain. Not going to change your brain. Acknowledgments are all about you. You're going to acknowledge every stretch, risk, and die you took. So going back to that stretch, risk, and die exercise. Today, I acknowledge myself for and any stretch, risk, or die you took, regardless if it lasted 10 seconds, a minute, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you did it. It doesn't matter if you did it or not. I mean, i.e., oh, I failed or I succeeded. That's not how we pay attention. We go, did we take a step forward, even if it was for 12 seconds? We take it, own it, and give ourselves acknowledgement. And then we also set our intention for the day. And today I'm willing to practice is how we write our intentions. Today I'm willing to practice, and really connecting that intention to our larger life. And usually an intention in the world of fearless living lasts a year, because that's how much we're going to grow into that intention. So intentions, acknowledgements, gratitudes, shower, that prayer, that reading before I go to bed, keeps me true, keeps me centered, keeps me fearless.
We have a really good question. I'm so glad, Shar, that you asked this. Anything specific to abandonment? And that's a big trauma trigger. So abandonment can, be very subtly, like somebody might not even realize that they suffer from abandonment, because it wasn't like you're dropped off somewhere and, your parents left you.
Yes. I would say that, our deepest human need is connection and belonging. That is our deepest human need as human beings, for all of us. That's our deepest human need. So abandonment literally sends a message to you that I don't want to be connected or belong to you, and that makes you unsafe. So you have to remember abandonment, rejection, any of those types of fear responses. There is either a learned or automatic response that you are not safe with others, that other people are not safe, right? They're going to hurt you, they're going to abandon you, they're going to betray you, etc. So when a client comes to me with something like this, we work on couple things. One is self-trust, trusting yourself, and also creating a sense of safety inside yourself, so that safety doesn't come from outside. Safety is an internal job. And trusting yourself rather than trusting others, because usually, I know for myself, for most of my life when I was drinking and all those things, I trusted other people more than myself, right? And I was looking for somebody to save me, to keep me safe more than myself. I didn't know how to keep myself safe, and I didn't know how to trust myself. I didn't even know who I was, right? So what I invite you to do is really start thinking about the ways in which you are or aren't keeping yourself safe. And I'm not talking about avoiding others. That's not what the safety I'm talking about. I'm talking about the internal safety that you know that you are safe. So quick little exercise for another trauma response. If you don't feel safe, let's say in a moment you don't feel safe. What I want you to do is I want you to take a deep breath, and I want you to ask yourself, when you're not feeling safe, just ask yourself, am I physically safe right now? Because many times when we're not feeling safe, it's an emotional safety that we're experiencing, not about physical safety. Sometimes it is, but many times it isn't. So ask yourself, are you physically safe? If you don't feel physically safe, you must walk away, right? You must get yourself physically safe, because you cannot deal with emotional safety issues if you don't feel physically safe. So you got to get yourself physically safe first. And then you go, okay, do I feel emotionally safe? No, I don't. I don't feel emotionally safe with this person. I don't trust this person. I don't feel comfortable with this person, right? Then you get to work on, okay, wait a minute. How do I make myself feel safe? How can I create that safety inside? And how can I practice self-trust? Those are two of the biggest aspects that people have an opportunity to cultivate when they're dealing with abandonment, rejection, et cetera. Because what's usually taken away from that is that innocence, that feeling of innocence. Their innocence gets ripped away from them. They don't trust themselves because they picked that person, or they were stuck with that person, or, a lot of times it feels like, I know, especially when it happens when you're younger, you feel responsible for it, right? Like I did. I felt responsible for my father killing my mother. I didn't stop it. So just think about it that way. Like, how can I cultivate inner self-trust? How can I start trusting myself? And how can I allow myself to create more safety inside myself so that I know where I end and others begin? Where I end and others begin. That's really critical to boundaries. So if you have an abandonment, if you have a rejection, any of those, boundaries and needs are going to be critical for you to start embodying and understanding, because that's the way you're going to keep yourself safe, right?
Thank you, Rhonda. So at the closing, can you repeat the prayer, and we'll end on that? And I really just want to say thank you for being a female disruptor. We're a little bit over time for the next session. So if you could just end it in that prayer, and I'm going to say now.
Okay, let's take a nice deep breath. Thank you, Miss Lisa. Take a nice deep breath. How wonderful it is to know that we are all that we need to be. So in this moment, show me where I should go. Show me what I should do. Show me what I should say and to who. Guide me in all that I do. Use me fully and completely. I am yours, and so it is. Amen. Deep breath, deep breath, deep breath. How wonderful it is. Life is good.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Thank you, Lisa, for being so incredible and such a way shower. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.